and welcome back to Skeptics on the Fringe. Yay, fantastic. The gentleman who works at the University of Edinburgh, and he's also an advisor to the Skeptic magazine. If you'd like to put your hands together and welcome Sergio Della Sala.
So, thanks for inviting me here. So we'll start the talk tonight by speaking a bit about myself. It's the first time that we meet, but I've got a long way with the Skeptics. I'm one of the founders of the Skeptics movement in Italy. It's very similar to this one, and this is me when we founded it several years ago. I'm also very interested, apart from science, in disseminating science. In fact, we started off with the public understanding of science, remember? However, the acronym didn't go down very well. They thought about this, and in fact, they changed it. They changed it. And now it's public engagement with science and technology, in fact. I prefer my own acronym, which is Science and the Public, rather than the other way around. So what we'll be talking about tonight is based on the brain. We'll be talking about the brain. In particular, we'll be talking about the fact the brain has two halves, left and the right, and this is used as a basis for a lot of flim-flam. And we'll go through this, particularly in relation to what happens in schools and in schools, primary schools in Scotland. So, first of all, we convince you that we have our brain, and the brain is divided in two halves, a left and a right. And the myth goes that the left brain is a sort of accountant, and the right brain is a sort of hippie. But that's not true. And I'll try to convince you that this is not true. We love to dichotomize things. We love the left and right brain, introvert versus extrovert, left and right in politics, whatever. And that's because we understand dichotomies. We all like dichotomies, and the left and right brain is just yet another dichotomy that we use to simplify a very complex element like the brain. The brain is a very complex machine. By transforming it into a very simple, the left is an accountant and the right is a hippie, we think we understand it. In fact, when children are taught by teachers who believe that the brain is very important for what they do, that understanding the brain is very important. Over 90% of teachers, when asked, you need to understand how the brain works, they say, yes, it's very important for designing educational programs. However, there is a misunderstanding in all of this discussion, and that's what they mean is understanding the brain structures, hippocampus, occipital cortex, as opposed to understanding the cognitive systems, how we learn, how we memorize. Now this is a pretty gruesome distinction, and a difficult one if you are not into it, because you think that by studying the hippocampus, by knowing where the hippocampus is, you can teach better. And this is what most of these programs are based on. Before I really start to dig my teeth into the matter, I want to make a proviso that I have nothing against teachers at all. I'm here to defend them. And I give this kind of talks to defend the teachers from the aggression of industries, my fellow colleagues, who are trying to impose neuroscience on education. The brain is a very complex organ. It's not an organ of representation. It's very complex. You cannot reduce it to a few lines in a teacher's manual. And it's very complex. It tricks us all the time. We have no idea how often we think that what we see is right and is different from what we thought it is. Skeptic antivirus. Well, anyway. So, can you read this line? And again, this is classic. These two little monsters are of the same size, although they appear very different. And you see things in appliances. You see happy and sad faces in plugs. You even see John Travolta in a purpose brand. Or you see Mother Teresa in a cinnamon bun. Right. So what's the problem? The problem is that this complexity is translated into programs in school by over-enthusiastic educators who misunderstand some of the basics of the brain and use this misunderstanding to build up, to create proposals which we use in schools. And most of them are based on the myth of the dichotomous brain, the left and the right. This is a very slippery path. So there are teaching options which derive from sound cognitive research, learning techniques. These are fine, although they shouldn't be used as readily available recipes. Then there are simplistic interpretation of cognitive theories, like the holistic reading. We can go back during the discussion, or levels of processing for memory. And then there are myths, pseudoscience, gobbledygook, mambo-jumbo, fling-flang, which is based on false ideas, on the false dichotomy, the left and the right, like the brain gene program, which we'll mention later on. So can we separate fact from fiction when we read all the news that come to our side? It's very difficult, because we are snowed under news. We cannot possibly know everything, learn everything, understand everything. So we need to delegate. It's very difficult to separate fact from fiction, particularly when the fiction is promulgated, is proposed by fellow scientists, which happens pretty often. This nice guy here, very clever guy, he won the Nobel Prize for chemistry. Then he wrote an autobiography claiming that he believes in astrology and showing evidence for this belief. But of course, Carrie Mullis is a chemist and he's a Capricorn. I'm a Libra. And Libras don't believe in astrology. Not these people. This is taken from the Brain Gene Teacher's Manual. So this is the manual that teachers, primary teachers in Scotland, read to improve the performance of our kids in primary schools. And it's based, as you see, on the left and right hemispheres. But if you read it, it makes no sense whatsoever. Zero sense. It's completely illogical. Completely logical. It's based on nothing. It's a series of words. Right? But on these words, we based our exercise in school. Now, to make it even more clear, this is taken from the from the web page of the proponent of Brain Gene, who are selling these programs for £3,000 to each teacher that we pay with our taxpayers' money to go and attend CPD so that they learn these things to implement to our kids. And actually, as you see, it's fabulous. The outcome they have is incredible. They can treat blind people, they can treat paralytic, epilepsy.
Can we raise the debt with it? Can we raise the debt with it?
Not sure. Can try. The main way they do it is to summon kids before school in the morning, quite often also in private school, here in Edinburgh. I learned it because one of my kids, I have 4 wee girls, bundle of joy. Two of them wanted to come, but they discovered that they could not get in because they're not 18. Yeah, I know. But one came back home and said, "Daddy, you know what I did today?" I said, "Oh, tell me." "I energized my brain." I said, "Hold on." So they line up the teacher who attended the course, £3,000 paid by us, lines them up and says, make exercises, like the brain button exercise. And the brain button exercise works like this. You make your C shape and you press against the brain button, who are here. You press them and you get more creative thoughts. So you ask, well, how does this work? It's very simple. You press here, hence you press against the carotid arteries, which are not there, but it doesn't matter. So you press against this alleged carotid arteries, and in so doing, you increase, by pressing them down, the oxygen in the frontal lobes, which are the seat of creativity, particularly if you press the right one. You have more oxygen in your right brain. And I say, well, look, fine, I don't want to quibble. I know I'll never convince anybody, but if you want to do it properly, you shouldn't just do it through this brain button. You should open them up. With a chainsaw, a hammer, something. Open them up. It's a bit gruesome, but they like blood. Then you find the carotid arteries, which are difficult to find. Then you press them. Okay, somebody will die in the process. But it's worthwhile. At least we know, we have evidence. Because evidence is what we need. So this is the publicity, the advertisement for Costa Brava. Well, have you been on holiday this year? Have you been to Costa Brava? You're lucky, but so this is, you pay and you get this. But actually, this is Costa Brava. So, this is the claim, then you check the evidence. And this is my little experiment. This is McDonald's, Big Mac. So you go, and it's juicy, meaty, fantastic, I want it. So you go, I've queued, I pay for it, but then this is what I got. And this is Burger King, same thing. This is what they promised, this is what they get. So this is the claim, this is the evidence, we need to check the evidence. So all I'm asking is, all right, I don't want you to believe me. Check the evidence. What is the evidence that I've been pressing here, kids get more clever? Show me the evidence, any evidence. They didn't, but sure they don't when they use other gizmos, including brain training, the Nintendo game, which is now being introduced in schools in Scotland to teach kids maths. Because by using brain training, kids get more clever, as it is demonstrated by this advertisement. This is the activity of the brain while you read this ad. And this is the activity of the brain when you play brain training. Right? That's a cartoon. It's a cartoon with some blob. And you talk to people and they say, oh, but your activity of the brain increases. There's not one single paper showing that. And actually, if it were true, it's the opposite. Because if your brain works smoothly, then you activate less, not more. You activate more when your brain is not working properly. So you need to recruit more cell and more cell and more cell. So actually, if anything, this advertisement shows that it's dangerous, very dangerous. They checked it. Users may get an illusion of huge gains when starting with brain age. Brain age is the US name for the brain training. But these have no more to do with learning than device than actually mental improvement. So what you learn about, you learn the actual game rather than a transferable skill. I don't know why this is popping up. So when people checked, they found nothing. This is a study in France. It is charlatanism to claim that it's a scientific test. Results indicate players, regardless of age, are more effective and efficient using pen and paper than using Nintendo. So pen and paper better than Nicole Kidman. So, or independent analysis. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. We use them in schools because we like shortcuts to improve people's skills. We don't like people to sweat on textbooks. We like shortcuts. Believing that by doing some exercise we get more clever. This is a bit dated, and several of you are young, but do you recognize this guy?
Yeah.
No, I lectured last year, and I showed a picture of John Nicholson, and my students didn't recognize him. And I felt so outdated, you have no idea. So, and this is a movie called Phenomenon, maybe somebody remember it. It's a story whereby John Travolta was struck by a lightning from the sky and became phenomenally intelligent, just like that. Now, a part of the problem of casting the story is, okay, you do nothing, you don't study 20 years, you wait there, a lightning hits you, and something happens. And this is what we're after, a quick fix. Like in the Mozart effect. You listen to some Mozart music, you become more clever, right? So much so that the Mozart effect, you find it in millions of web sites. The state of New York has in all libraries. The state of Tennessee sends a tape with Mozart music to pregnant women so that the kids become more clever. But what's the evidence? Zero. There is not one single piece of evidence showing that by playing Mozart music, people become more clever. And this is our little debunking. An intelligence test. 10 minutes later, through silence, a little improvement. Through Mozart, a bit more improvement. But any noise, minimalistic music produces the same improvement. It's like having a shot of caffeine. You have a double espresso, you have the same effect. After a quarter of an hour, it disappears. Right. In fact, these dichotomies are so pervasive that they go beyond the simple left and right. Left and right are imposed on more clever subdivisions, like a visualizer versus verbalizer. If you have kids, you know they come back from home, say they are being labeled as I'm a visual kid, or I'm a verbal kid. And so the story goes that somebody is a visual learner or a verbal learner. Again, the available evidence has been reviewed by Pashner and colleagues a couple of years back, and they found nothing, zero evidence for this dichotomy. There is not one piece of evidence supporting this dichotomy. Yet we use it in virtually all teaching programs in schools, including the programs in Scotland. So whenever there is a claim, we should ask, what's the evidence? What is the evidence that there is such a thing as a creative right brain and an accounting left brain? What is the evidence that we have people, well, visualizer, verbalizer? What is the evidence that we have people who can learn if you press their brain buttons? The evidence is the only thing that we need, but we cannot do it ourselves. So we have people doing it for us. In fact, when we quibble with, say, city council or educational authorities, we say, well, why do you impose these things in schools? Why do you allow these things in schools? They say, no, we don't allow any free and fun because we check the providers. And the Learning Teaching Scotland spokeswoman said to me, we hold a register of all CPD career progress development providers who agree to a set of principles and provide 2 references which are checked and updated every 3 years. Now, the references for Brain Gym are published in the Brain Gym Journal, which is somewhat suspicious. But also, it's not entirely true. Check this out. We check the providers, but this is a site, Therapies for Life. And what they did was to pay £90,000 to this provider in one school so that they could massage the feet of the obnoxious kids in the schools. £90,000. So I asked, okay, that's fine, it's a bit of money, you have no computers, but the feet are pretty smooth. So what is the evidence? And the teaching spokesperson did not know. I checked with them, the bud, and this is what they write. Research is one of the main aims, and at present we are in the process of setting up a research project into the effectiveness of the service we thought. That is, there is nothing, not even them, not independent. I mean, at least independent would be better, but at least them themselves, making it up, inventing, lying. No, but they're honest. They don't lie. They say, we don't know. We massage the feet. They get 100K for that. So it's not true they check the providers. So I wrote again in Scotland. I wrote and said, I'm a foreigner, I don't understand. Please. And she was fabulous. She wrote back saying, okay, Brain Gym does not claim to understand how these movements work in a neuroscience model, but for many of the movements, there are working theories that stand to be disproved. Straight on Popperian. This is how science works and evolves, you know? So, in stating there is no evidence for using specific types of movement, this does not mean that movement does not help learning. That's the head of learning and teaching staff. And what we have is somebody who does not understand the basics of science. So what this says is that, okay, we have no evidence that this works, but it's up to you to disprove that it works. So I sent a brief email, said, I understand now, really, I do understand. I invite you to my garden here in Bransfield. I have a donkey which flies. Come and disprove it. In fact, it is true that if people before going to school get a bit of exercise, whatever it is, they are happier and get better. But whatever exercise, when they check 10 minutes break for exercise, playing basketball or juggling, they work better. So it is true that sometimes if they do exercise they get better, but not because of this incredible convoluted explanation based on the left and right hemisphere. It's because they move about and they have 40 minutes lessons rather than an hour. So this is what we do. This is a little man pulling a lever, and he's zapped like John Travolta by a lightning. And then we have two options. This guy is a normal person, this guy is a scientist. And the normal person says, I guess I shouldn't do that. But the scientist says, I wonder if that happens every time. So it's by trying again that and we delegate to scientists the opportunity to check out evidence for us. So it comes that we believe that we can just energize our brain. This story goes a long way in the past, when the myth of we only use 10% of our brain was born, and was promulgated by a guy called Dave Carnegie, who sold 2 million books entitled How to Win Friends and Influence People, just in the 30s, 2 million just in the US in the 30s, based on the fact that he said we have to use more than 10% of our brain. And he quoted William James, who actually didn't say that we only use 10% of our brain. He said everybody has potential, which is a bit different. So the principle is, if there is enough of it out there, if people keep telling everybody right brain is creative, it becomes true. Everybody. I was at the book festival 2 days ago. Fantastic, fantastic place to spend time. And I was listening to a great writer, my proof of evidence, Eva Hoffman, and she wrote fantastic books. But during the question time, people were asking about memory. She was answering. She was answering about the difference between short-term memory, long-term memory, right brain and left brain, not getting one answer right. And this is, but because this is a crude evidence. We know that the right brain is creative. It's a fact. There is no evidence, it doesn't matter. It's now a fact. It's a fact which dates back to the 19th century and has been treated. The asymmetry has been treated with metallotherapy, hemi-hypnosis, just one hemisphere, magnets to balance the hemispheres, exactly like brain gym does. The purpose of brain gym is to balance the hemispheres. And it's everywhere. I mean, this is not the right advertising to use nowadays, but a few months ago this was okay. And his right brain is clearly more creative than the left brain. Again, you have bilateral integration, ranging, and in fact, it's backed up by the fact that even in Wikipedia, left-handers are more creative, as proved by Einstein, who actually was not left-handed, or Picasso, who was actually not left-handed, or Benjamin Franklin, who actually was not left-handed, but was pictured as being left-handed by flipping the painting that is in the Philadelphia Museum. This is the original painting where he holds the quill in his right hand, and this is what appeared on the left. Just they flipped it. Okay, Leonardo was left-handed. So, is there any source in our right brain which needs to be released? I'm not sure, but certainly people believe it. And this is my preferred example. This I found in the KLM in-flight magazine called Holland Herald. And this is a technique, a life coaching for the pilots. I use KLM a lot. I was terrified. This is the exercise. Okay, you need to be more creative. You need to get more oxygen to the brain, particularly to the right side of the brain. How do you do that? Well, you pay $400 to Angela Zacken, and she teaches you how to breathe through your left nostril. The issue that the air goes down to the lung is a minuscule glitch in the theory. And again, okay, Angela may be not a scientist, but this is everywhere. This is a bestseller. A scientist. Again, the left and right brain, we are creative with the divided brain. The divided brain makes the Western world. So, some interpretation of asymmetry does cause problems, although it is true that we have two hemispheres, as discovered by a lot of scientists, particularly by Roger Sperry, this scary-looking guy who won the Nobel Prize for it. In fact, if you have a lesion in the right or not in the left, you have symptoms that are different from if you have a lesion in the left and not in the right. For instance, one thing that we discovered is that people sometimes have difficulty in orienting objects. They hang pictures upside down. They copy pictures in the wrong direction. They hold books upside down. They lose the capacity of orienting themselves, which actually is not unique to brain lesion people, as shown by this picture. You say, okay, that's him, you know, it's gone. No, it's a tradition. It's a tradition of U.S. leaders. When he was here, he was proved not to be able to double tasking. He was riding his bike, waved to a policeman, and fell. And it was not the only one. Mrs. Gerald Ford falling from the stair, and the story goes that people were saying that Gerald Ford could not climb down the stairs and chew at the same time. But this is the real quote from Lyndon Johnson. There's not chewing gum and climbing down the stairs. But he's gone. He's gone. So we have a new guy now. But you know, it's a tradition.